the only difference between a full-time seller and a part-time seller is the full-time seller is just buying more or working more hours. They're not looking at any different data. A lot of people who are doing it part-time are sourcing from same places that people who are doing it full-time are sourcing for. So you got to find your rhythm, and you just got to be consistent. And especially, coming out of Q4, like, rhythms kind of get destroyed. I was to the point I was like, I should put a cot in my garage because I'm spending so much time here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome back to the Doughboys podcast, where we talk all things Amazon FBA and business. I'm your host, Logan. I'm joined today by my lovely studly co-hosts, Cisco and Josh. And we have, for the first time ever, a guest on the podcast filled by Amazon. How's it going, everyone?
Good.
Awesome. Phil, we are super stoked to have you as our first ever guest. If you want to start off, just tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your business journey.
Sure. Yep. So my name's Philip, and I met Logan and Cisco a while back in their Amazon journeys. First time meeting Josh. So
he's not important. Don't worry.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man.
Man, nice to meet you. So I've been selling on Amazon for a few years now. And what kind of prompted it was I was really looking at just side hustles to pay off our family debt, some student loans, cars, things like that, and came across the Amazon model. Looked at a ton of content over the course of 2019, and then in beginning of 2020, I said, I've been looking at this long enough, so I'm just going to jump in and try it. So I started selling used books, and that went well for about 2 months until March of 2020. And because of certain events, that kind of put a hamper on it. But I continued through that, and here we are. It'll be 3 years here next month, selling on Amazon. So it's been a good journey. I do it full time now. I was able to pay off our debt, quit my job, my corporate job, and then now I do this full time. So
awesome.
Nice.
Do you remember how you first found out about Amazon, like where you first saw it, and then what was it about Amazon that made you want to jump in? Like, what was appealing about it?
Yeah, so I want to say it was TikTok is where I first saw it, and what made it appealing was just the model looked easy, because I was looking at a lot of content of people just scanning barcodes with their phones and, looking at simple numbers. So this is what item costs in the store. This is what it's selling on Amazon. And so that concept just was easy to wrap my head around. And so, like I said, after just consuming a lot of content, I just decided just to take the plunge. And it was one of those things where, I told my wife about it, and she was like, "You want to sell used books? That's weird." And so
just wait till you start selling bras.
Yeah, that was a little while down the road. But what was crazy? Yeah, so what was crazy, and I think for Amazon sellers in particular, because a lot of people are familiar with maybe selling on eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Mercari, places like that. What I noticed with a lot of Amazon sellers who start, and this is one thing that just takes time, is like there's not that confidence because you don't have the proof of concept, is that people try it 1 or 2 or 3 times, maybe send in a couple of shipments, and nothing sells, so they're like, it doesn't work. But I saw all these people doing it, so like, is it a scam? I don't know. And so for me, the first time I went out sourcing, I just went to a couple of Goodwills, and I brought my wife and I think 1 or 2 of my kids with us, and because they like to go to Goodwills and just they'll thrift or whatever. And so we went to one, and there was somebody there scanning books. I was like, oh, okay, so people actually do this. And I was a little nervous about just also sitting there scanning books. So I did like 10, 15 minutes. And then we went to another Goodwill, and there was nobody there to buy the book. So I started scanning books, and within like 10 minutes, I scanned this young adult fiction novel, and it was coming up on Amazon for like $150, $160. So I grabbed it, ran over to my wife, was like, this is crazy. Look at this. And that was actually the first book that I sold on Amazon. Was I bought it for $1 and sold it for 160.
Wow.
And so, for me, it was
You're
like
hooked.
right away. Yeah, this thing works. But I know a lot of people who, and it may not be something that's like $160. Maybe it's a, $30 book that's selling for that price. And, they send stuff in and they don't sell, and then they think it just doesn't work. And so, for me, the concept just proved itself a little bit quicker, but I was also consistent about it, because once I got that first sale, like you said, I'm hooked, keep doing it. And for that first year, after like a month, my wife was like, oh, okay, this works. Cool. You do your thing. That's, whatever, on the weekends, go and do it. But like my family, they would just give me like these weird looks and like, kind of when it was brought up. But
I'm sure they still do.
you know what? Fast forward now, and I've had not close family, but family that kind of I talk to here and there is like, hey, like if we give you some money, like could we invest with it, and then like you give us a return back? So it's like it's kind of flipped now.
Wow.
And then people that I'm close to will ask me about how's this thing work and what do you do and stuff. And so, but I think that's with anything. If I was, not that I am, but if I was like working out constantly and somebody saw a change, then naturally those questions are gonna be asked.
Mm-hmm.
It's human nature to be curious,
especially when you see something that
working.
seems to be working or doing well.
Yep. So what made you switch from books to what you're doing now, Phil? What like triggered you to start expanding your business model and kind of changing it up?
Just seeing the potential out there. I saw opportunities. So when I first made the switch, because I sold books alone from February 2020 to like, I want to say November or December. So pretty much that first year, I only sold books. I didn't get ungated in any category. And the first category I got ungated in was in December of 2020. I got ungated in grocery. But like I said, because I had been consuming a lot of content prior to starting, one of the things that came across my consciousness, I guess, whatever you want to call it, like my awareness, was the model of private label. And so I didn't know anything about it, but I was, the algorithm figured out, obviously I was interested because I started seeing more and more content about that. But at the end of 2020, I started seriously looking at private label as a model to dip my toes into. But I also knew that books worked really well for me. I was doing really well with books. And so I actually was trying to decide between going into doing bulk books or private label. And I had a product lined up for private label as far as I had samples had been sent to me. I was negotiating with a supplier, and I was also talking to somebody who was going to be able to supply me with a lot of books. And so I had a semi-trailer of books lined up to be delivered, and I had to kind of decide between those two. And I was ready to pull the trigger on the bulk books. The guy was going to have the semi shipped out, or, start heading my way on a Friday, and it was going to be delivered on Monday. And Friday morning, he called me and was like, hey, we had something with our forklift breakdown, so we're not going to be able to send the books out until Monday. And we hadn't made any payment. I was going to make payment once the semi left, like for 50%. And when he called and said that, something just like was a little trigger in my mind, like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this, invest this much money doing it. And so I told him that I wasn't going to move forward with it. And then I started doing private label in 2021 on a small scale, but I also started doing more arbitrage outside of books. And I pretty much stopped selling books probably first quarter of 2021, maybe into the second quarter.
Yeah, so like you said, we hadn't met until now, so I actually don't know what you're doing right now. When you said you're like switched your books arbitrage, are you doing more online or more RA or like a mix of the two?
Yeah, so right now I do a mix of the two, and I did not do any online arbitrage until the beginning of last year. As far as heavy, I was doing all RA. And I started doing online arbitrage because the part of the country I live in, it gets cold part of the year. And so I was like, I really don't want to be driving around. So I'll try and do OA. And I found that a little bit easier, obviously. I can order stuff from where I'm at, have it delivered. And so right now I currently do, if it was a breakdown of percentage wise, I probably do 60% OA, 20% RA, and 20% private label is my business model. Currently, this year, it's going to probably change to 50% private label and 50% arbitrage.
Now, that seems, for me, in my limited experience, that seems a little like abnormal. Going to private label, it seems like people go RA, OA, private label. Not that that has to be what it is, but it's just interesting. You went like books, private label. Did you feel like that was hard to get into, or?
No, the only hard part with private label, and it's probably the same with wholesale, is the work up front. Now, granted, there's a lot of people who can say, no, private label doesn't work. I tried first time, product flopped. But the way that I have approached private label is pretty tedious on the front end, as far as just doing step-by-step product research, negotiation, samples, blah, 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 those kind of steps to get to launching a product. So for me, it wasn't hard. Once I had the product narrowed down, had talked to suppliers, knew what I wanted, knew how I wanted the listing on Amazon to look, which is a big part of launching successfully. And so, I'm kind of the mindset that I think anybody could really get into private label. And it's kind of hard to say, like, well, if you do it right, but that's with anything, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, you can get in shape if you do it right, or you can learn how to do whatever if you do it right. But private label, you can do it without having to invest, $10,000, $15,000. My first product launch, all in, I think cost me around $5,000, and I think a little bit over 1,000 of that was I hired a photographer and somebody to do my copy for me. So the actual product cost itself was, just under $4,000, 3,500, something like that, 3,700 all in. And that was enough to get me 3.5 months worth of inventory based on how much I thought I would sell a month.
So talk about that a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So it was your first product launch, right? And so looking back at it now, would you say it was a good product launch, or what are some of the things that you learned from doing it the first time around?
Yeah, so it's definitely a good product. I mean, I have 2 products right now that I sell. The first one is still going, and I've not changed the copy, the product. The only thing I've ever changed with that is I'll mess with the price from time to time, and my advertising spend, the PPC part of it. So the one thing with private label, and like I said, this is my mentality, which is maybe a little bit different, is when I'm looking at private label products, which right now I'm looking at launching at least 6. Well, I shouldn't say at least, but I'm looking at launching 6 products this year, 4 here in the first half of the year. What I'm looking for is I'm looking just to get a hit on base. So like a baseball analogy, I think a lot of people, and this is why a lot of people say private label doesn't work out of the gate, or you can't do it just starting out, is because you have to sink so much money in. And a lot of people are looking for a home run product. They're looking for something that, out of the bat, I'm making 10 grand a month on that product. And they're certainly out there, but in the game of baseball, you can score more runs by just getting on base one at a time. And sometimes those singles can turn into home runs, which I feel like my first product has kind of gotten there. So when I'm looking at what I would call a single, I'm looking at something that I can get 3 to 4 sales a day. So around 100 units a month. I feel like that's enough sales to where, depending on what the product cost is, I might make, $5,000 profit, but if I can make $700 to $1,000 profit, then I don't have to worry about overextending myself with how much I'm spending up front. And I'm ordering enough inventory to where I'm not going to run out of stock. If I'm selling more than 3 or 4 a day, like let's say I get up to 10 sales a day, after the first month, I'm going to know that this product's working well enough. And so I can make a reorder, but I still have enough in stock that by the time that next shipment arrives, I'm not running out of stock. So I look at it as like just getting on base for a product. So if I look at a bunch of competitors and it looks like they're getting, let's just say 30 to 100 sales a day on the top end, well, is there enough of that piece of pie where I can just come in and grab 3 to 5 based on my listing, the product, what differentiates it from everything else? And if I feel like I can do that, then I'm going to look at seriously as just entering that market. And over time, what'll happen is your ranking will go up the longer you keep it in stock, the longer you show sales velocity. And that grows what I call, like it grows roots with Amazon. What'll start happening is you'll be able to dial back your your advertising spend, because now you're ranking organically at the top of the page for whatever people are searching for. Sales will start to gain momentum because now you're in front of those eyes organically because you've been there longer. I think anybody can really do it if you put in the work to do it right, and don't follow just because someone said you can go buy, oh, this sells on Amazon for $20 and you can get on Alibaba for $1. Like that kind of content is like kind of a recipe for disaster, but it can start you on the path to get to where you need to be.
So Phil, when are you going to drop a private label course?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think I want to.
I just learned a lot right there.
Yeah, that was really good.
I think I want to put out content on YouTube.
Yeah,
that's a good place.
Just to help people.
Yeah,
with some of the basic concepts. I haven't.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm at the point of enough products to really feel like I've mastered it totally.
I love what you said about the baseball analogy, because when I was working for Logan, he would say that at minimum once a week we build our business on base hits.
Yep.
And that's exactly it. And the more base hits you get, the more you advance your runners, and they turn into exactly that, home runs.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. And it's something that I think we all kind of preach to in our businesses, whether it's OA or private label, to definitely go wide and not necessarily deep on everything.
Yes.
Yeah, and with arbitrage, I mean, honestly, some of the best products are the most boring things. And so, like, it's great to sell Nike hoodies, right? But
or Mr. Beast hoodies,
Yeah, or that might be an IP.
Oh, absolutely.
Claim. But you can build a business selling dryer repair parts, and do just as well. The competition can be a little bit more limited and things like that, and it's boring, but it's a single.
So Phil, I feel like a lot of people go like retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, and then the next step for a lot of people, what I see is wholesale.
Mhm.
So
Oh.
do you have aspirations to get into that, or why did you decide to go into private label instead of wholesale?
I didn't really know anything about wholesale. So like I said, the content I was consuming was a lot of arbitrage, and somehow I started seeing private label content. So that's probably the main reason. I really don't have any aspirations to do wholesale right now. I feel like that's going to spread myself a little bit too thin to try to do that. But I have thought about um, doing some grocery wholesale because, like I said, that was one of the first categories I got ungated in. And so I became really familiar with the grocery category. And like when I do RA now, probably 80-90% of the RA that I do is all grocery. So that's the only part of wholesale that I would ever probably consider getting into.
Now, when you said that, my first thought was, is that going to be seasonal? Because you'd have to worry about melting season for a lot of groceries, right?
Nope. I do
Oh.
seasonal grocery, but I sell grocery year round. So the only thing with
You just have,
grocery really is the expiration date part of it. But
yeah.
um,
Did you have any
anything,
problem with that? If you did it
no,
wholesale, no problems?
that I'm not sure about. I've heard from people who do grocery wholesale that sometimes it can be short dated products that they get. So that's why, I haven't dove into it right now,
Yeah.
just because that would be a concern. Like I've done a few things with online arbitrage with grocery, but those sites say what the expiration dates are, and I haven't had a problem with that, and it's been very minimal.
Yeah.
On the amount of products I've sourced away, all of it's all right. But that goes back to like I saw Logan posted something recently about like, scanning for hours on end in a Dollar Tree or a dollar store really helped gain confidence or something along those
Mhm.
lines. And it's the same thing with how I started doing grocery is that I would go to when I started getting in like to things besides books, I would go to Walmart's on a Saturday morning and I would spend sometimes 4 hours in one aisle because I was scanning every single product on both sides of the aisle, top to bottom, left to right, manually typing them and beyond just scanning them. And some of those products that I found in 2021, I've sold ever since I found them. But
Mhm.
you know, putting in that work, if I was just going through and scanning random things, like I can't say that I would sell a lot of grocery.
Yeah, that's the way you got to do it. I went through Nate Jackson from Hustle Buddies replan workshop, and he
Mhm.
talked about that. Like literally pick an aisle, start in the top left corner, and scan every single item in that aisle. And that's how you're not just scan, but like you said, do title search and image search, and that's how you're gonna find really good replenishable items because not everyone is going to be putting in that work. And then we also mentioned grocery on wholesale and expiration date. Generally, you just kind of communicate that beforehand. For example, one of my suppliers, they guarantee me a 4 month minimum. So it's kind of close. I'd like to see a little bit longer, but every supplier is going to be different and just communicate it beforehand.
And for people that might not know, when you guys are talking about the grocery expiration problem, what is that?
Yeah. So what is it? 3 months from when you're sending it to FBA?
Mm,
Yeah. So if I'm sending something in today, the earliest it could expire would be like
April?
it might be, I think it's pushing May. I think it's
Yeah.
pushing beginning of May. So I think it's at seems
think
like it's
it's-
over 90 days. I want to say it's 125, but
Yeah.
I think
it's
every
definitely
type
it's
of grocery
definitely at
is a
least
little
90
different.
days.
But I think it's 90 days plus time to consume or something like
Yeah.
that. And every
Yeah.
item is a little bit different. Amazon has a chart on Seller Central.
Yeah. So if I go scan grocery right now and I see something that's dated June, then I have to either know by experience that it's going to sell really quick or based on the sales rank and what the Keepa chart looks like. So like I'm looking at stuff that is like September, October, November or later expiration dates if I'm sourcing right now to feel really comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, typically when you're selling groceries, you're looking for stuff that's selling month over month anyways.
Right.
Right. So It's going quick.
So, Phil, you talked a little bit about wanting to kind of get on YouTube and be more of a presence online. And, the content that you have put out, I'll be quite honest, Phil, it makes me chuckle. I get a good laugh. So I wanted to know,
Is that good or
where
bad?
does your no, it's good. It's definitely good,
Phil
especially
has top tier Amazon memes.
yeah, especially the Christmas song you put out during the end of Q4. That was superb.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, where do you get your humor from, and where do like these ideas actually generate from, or are you just stealing these ideas from your kids and taking ownership of them?
There's a dry sense of wit, dry sense of humor in my family. Anything that makes me laugh when I see a video, then like I'll just relate it to like, okay, how does this relate to either an Amazon or online seller? And my sons and I always save videos for them. And so like when they get home from school, I'll be like, hey, check out these like 4 or 5 videos. And my wife just rolls her eyes, and here we are, we're cackling because just stupid stuff, people falling, things like that. So
Awesome.
She's rolling her eyes until one of your videos go viral.
No, she hates when I make her watch videos.
It's so funny.
She's missing out. There's some great content there.
There is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Phil, what does your day-to-day look like now with your current business model?
Yeah. So if you're talking right now at the moment, it's kind of taking a breather from Q4 and getting all my tax stuff prepped. But overall, generally, I get up pretty early, and I will usually read for a little bit in the mornings before everyone gets up, and get the kids off to school. And then I'm sourcing probably from 9 o'clock in the morning till noon, 1 o'clock. Depends on, part of that depends on if I'm doing RA, and if I'm doing OA. If I'm doing OA, it's like, okay, have I kind of met what I want to spend each day? I kind of set myself a goal of what I want to spend daily. And sometimes that's really, I look at it really as a course of over a week, because there's some days like today, for instance, we have some things going on this afternoon, this evening. So today's going to be a pretty short day for me. But if I know those things are happening, then I'll just either source more in the evening or spend a little bit more than I had planned on. If I really plan on going RA, I have a route that I do in town. I'll hit Walmart's, Targets, Dollar Trees, Dollar Generals. I think there's 20 Walmarts within an hour of me, so I can do RA pretty heavy if I want to. Mostly it's sourced in the mornings, and in the afternoon it's, maybe a little bit of administrative stuff.
So, Phil,
kids,
it seems like, obviously you've kind of converted over to being a full-time Amazon seller, and you kind of have your rhythm down packed of kind of how you go on through your day-to-day. But I know it wasn't always like that, right? Like before you had a professional full-time job, you were doing this on the side, and you have to also juggle family time. So what is a piece of advice that you think, would be helpful to someone that used to be, or that is currently in, a similar situation that you were when you first started?
you got to pace yourself, and you have to find what rhythm works for you. It's easy to get in the trap of seeing somebody do really well and think like you have to be there tomorrow. When I started, I was only able to spend about 8 hours a week in its entirety on Amazon. Saturday mornings, I would go to all of the Goodwills, and I would scan every book there, buy what I could. Part of Saturday into Sunday was prepping them, getting them boxed up, and shipping them out. And that was all I could do. And I was fine with that because I was consistent with it. You got to pace yourself, and you got to be consistent. So the only difference between a full-time seller and a part-time seller is the full-time seller is just buying more or working more hours. They're not looking at any different data. They're not, sourcing I mean, there are obviously a ton of places to source from, but for the most part, a lot of people who are doing it part-time are sourcing from same places that people who are doing it full-time are sourcing for. So you got to find your rhythm, and you just got to be consistent. And especially, coming out of Q4, like rhythms kind of get destroyed for a lot of people. And so, like I said, for me right now, it's kind of taking a breather, just because, like, I was to the point I was like, I should put a cot in my garage because I'm spending so much time here packing stuff up. But
That's awesome.
Fall asleep with boxes in your hands, wake up to continuously putting on tape.
Yeah, but being consistent is huge, and finding your own rhythm, because you can get, it's anything else, right? You can get yourself out of whack with a lot of things in life if you don't learn what a good rhythm for you is. So, like, when it comes, the nice thing for me that I really enjoy about this whole thing of being able to do this full time and this being how I provide for my family is I was never able to go to my kid's first day of school until last year, because my job required me being out of the door before 6:30 in the morning for like 20 years. So the fact that I was able to go to their first day of schools, and now I can take them to school every day, for me, that's huge. And so, like, knowing that, okay, I need to work extra hours today, but I get to choose those hours. That's one of the huge benefits of selling online, is that you can kind of pick when and where you work.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You can kind of manipulate your day to what's more of a priority for that specific day, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely echo that sentiment, for sure. But Phil, I also wanted to ask, what, starting out, who were some of the creators that you were following that kind of inspired you to kind of keep going and continue learning? And you mentioned that you consumed a lot of content. So, what were some of those pieces of content?
A guy out there, Reezy Resells.
Shout out Reezy Resells.
I think a lot of people were familiar with him. He's making a little bit more content now. He was one that I saw a lot of content from that I remember. There was a lot of
Ninja
people.
Sticker, let's go.
Oh my goodness.
I would go
Yeah,
get
get
my
some
flipping
Phil
supply
stickers.
skateboard, but it's in the other room.
Yeah, mine's in my garage.
And like Logan already mentioned, Nate Jackson over at Hustle Buddies. I think that was the first Facebook group that I really joined, and once I was looking to get outside of books, his content really helped me starting out, and getting more into the space is Chris Grant at Clear the Shelf. I started looking at some of his content last year, went through his OA challenge, and I've told countless people who have asked me for recommendations or places to get more knowledge. I've told them about his OA challenge course, because when it comes to Keepa, there are very few people that I know of that can teach how to read a Keepa chart. And it's funny, because when I started selling books, like, I would see people ask questions, or I probably even ask questions myself about, like, hey, do you think this book is really selling for this much? And everyone would be like, check the Keepa chart. And I was like, what's Keepa? I don't know what Keepa is. So
that's an Amazon.
Those are a few that I remember. Like I said, well, with books, I was just going by Scout IQ.
Right.
It was either green or red. So, and the risk level was very low if I was making a mistake on a $1 book.
Just never tell Logan
those are
that. Logan will yell at you.
Use Scout IQ?
Yeah. No, the Keepa, not having Keepa. He loses his mind.
Books are a bit of an exception because you have eScore.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't even know if I had Keepa for several months in. But off that topic, what's actually interesting is I was talking to I had lunch with an Amazon seller the other day, and they were one of the first people to use Keepa when Keepa first came out. But he told me, this blew my mind. He's been selling on Amazon, I want to say, for like 7 years. And some of it's been part-time. Like, he has a lot of other commitments. But he told me that he doesn't even use Keepa anymore. He uses Helium 10. I was like,
Huh.
that's strange. But
Yeah.
anyways, back to the original question. Reezy, Nate Jackson, Chris Grant were some of the people. Chris Grant was more recent, but when I first started, those are the Reezy and Nate Jackson were the first people that I really remember. I know there was others, but those are the two that, to me, were putting out good content, and it didn't seem scammy or, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to have you as our first guest on the Doughboys podcast is because I think me and Logan think you're a very much so a stand-up guy. We love talking to
Absolutely.
you.
I
We
agree.
think you're super, super knowledgeable. And I think talking to other people in the community, they've echoed the same thing.
I'm actually
Um,
standing up right now.
Yeah, we can tell. We've just realized that you're only 3'9", so it's
I
okay.
had to know the dad joke was coming.
But
Well,
has it hit you yet that potentially you're going to be one of those influences to someone else, to the next Phil by Amazon?
yeah, I appreciate that. That's kind. No, I don't. That's not any aspiration. I really started doing social media just to document for myself, like milestones, and then figuring I would share some knowledge. And it's funny because I'm sure Logan and Cisco, I'm sure you're the same way. Is like sometimes I'll put things out there as like a, hey, did you know about this? And for me, it's like it's not new knowledge for me, or not surprising for me, but for a lot of, and I was in that same place. I'm sure, there's things when people talk about like fulfilled by merchant FBM, it's like, what's that? How do you do that?
You're just being you and documenting your life, and they can easily ingest that, and there's no pressure. So,
and
document,
I'm
don't
actually
create.
doing that. Yeah, I'm doing that myself privately now for private label, because I still get that hesitation of like it's a little bit of a risk to still slap down a couple $1,000s on a product. And so I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to start documenting this stuff for myself now, because when I get those feelings again of this is hard, this is tough, I can't get past this, like if I have it documented for myself, like, well, there you go. And that's the kind of stuff I'll probably put out on YouTube.
yeah, I liked what you were saying a little bit ago also about the consistency, even though it was just 2 days and a few hours on Saturday and Sunday a week, because I feel like there's now this culture around, and some of it's just people being young, but they just pick something up for 5 minutes and then, oh, it didn't work, it's not selling, and they put it down. They don't keep trying. And what you were saying there, where you just like stayed with it, stayed consistent, that's also, I think, what Cisco's saying, a good role model for people. And as the saying goes, like the student becomes the teacher. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, even if you're trying to or not, your knowledge is gonna be reached by younger, more unexperienced people. Yeah,
Absolutely. So Phil, where can everyone find your content that we're talking about?
Right now it's mainly on Instagram, Filled by Amazon. I do have a YouTube channel, same handle. I think there's only one video there currently. But that stuff will start to grow this
Awesome.
month and into this year.
Yeah,
We'll
so
go
if
ahead
you
and
guys
link it in the bio
if you guys
for
want to
sure.
get, yeah, we'll link that down below if you guys want to get some top tier Amazon memes and learn from a real stand-up guy who apparently is standing up right now. Go check out Filled by Amazon on Instagram and YouTube. Link down below. Phil, thank you so much for being our first ever guest. I'm going to go ahead and
Thanks for having me.
us up with a quote. Intellect is nothing without energy. Ideas are nothing without energy. High energy people win. Thanks for joining. We'll see you on the next one.